Hello, my name is Marty Lecheider. I'm the product manager for Domino Volt. And today I'm going to share with you the Domino Volt roadmap. Just a note about the information being presented today. This is forward-looking. We are planning on many new features, which I'm going to talk about. But of course, like all good plans, things may change. So where are we going with the product? Well, the themes for our roadmap are the following. I'll start in the middle. Usability. Usability is central to everything we're doing. We're constantly evaluating every aspect of the user interface for the product, scrutinizing it, and where appropriate, redesigning it so that it's easier to use, it's more pleasing to use. And this effort with usability, it flows into everything about the product. So the major areas beyond usability that we're focused on include, first off, views and dashboards. So what I mean by this are view and dashboard style applications. If you are familiar with the product today, it is very forms centric. And with views and dashboards, what we're attempting to do is expand the scope of what you're able to do with the product. And we'll get into that in more detail. The next area that we're going to focus quite a bit on is workflow. There are some very strong workflow capabilities in the product today. We have plans for greatly enhancing these workflows and making them easier to implement. And then the third area that I'll touch on is integration. We're going to do quite a bit to expand your integration options and to make it much easier for the Volt designer to integrate different systems and data sources into their applications. And then finally, we're constantly looking for ways to improve how the product works with Domino. So Domino Volt works on Domino, it runs on Domino, and we want to look for new ways to leverage your Domino investments in data and applications, and new ways to take advantage of the capabilities which are inherent in Domino. So let's talk about the December release. This came out yesterday, and I'm going to do a demo of it right after this chart, but let me just run through the major areas that we have added to the product. The first is in usability improvements. We've added a properties panel on the right-hand side of the design screen. And we've eliminated many of the modal dialog property settings that you had in the product. And we'll see this in the demo. The result is that it's a much cleaner and simplified experience. It's more intuitive, and it will require fewer clicks to do what you want to do. The next item is corporate themes. So we've introduced a way that you can add your own custom themes to the product and make them available to users. So if you have different users building applications in Domino Volt, they can pick from what are your corporate themes and apply that to their application. The next item contains search operator. You can now do full text search on your Domino Volt app. And you do this with the contains or does not contain search operator, which I'll demo. And this takes advantage of the full text indexing capabilities in Domino. You can also now sort by your own fields. So whatever fields you've declared in your application, you can now sort by those in the data view page, as well as with services. and we'll demonstrate that as well. Another great new feature is the name picker. So this is a new item which is on the palette, and it does what the name suggests. It allows you to pick a name out of a directory or a group out of the directory, and we'll demo that. Emailing attachments. So if you have an attachment item in your application, perhaps you've got a form where you're asking for people to submit supporting documentation, or perhaps it's a form where you're generating a PDF based on information entered into the form and attaching that to the document. Well, now you can include that email attachment in an email notification, or include that attachment in the email notification. And then application history, which gives you a diary of all the changes that have been made to your app. We'll look at that. Mapping email, internet email to role and email notifications, as opposed to just using the Domino user IDs for role and notifications. And then we've made some improvements on how you can handle service errors. So if you're building an application and you have service calls in your application, we're giving you a way that you can more gracefully capture the fact that there is a service error and inform the user what's going on. And I'll demo that. And then numerous bug fixes. One which I'm noting here is we fixed an issue with anonymous email notifications. We introduced anonymous access in the July release, and there was an issue with email notifications for anonymous users, so that is fixed. So let's get into the exciting part of this session, which is the demo. So I'm going to back out of PowerPoint. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you Domino Vault. So this is the July release of Domino Vault. And I'm going to open up an app. And the reason I want to show you the July release is so you can see the improvements that we made. So here I'm in the design mode, and I have an app. And if I want to change the properties of something, you have to click this cogwheel and you get a modal dialog. So if I wanted to change the column in the heading and in the table to, let's say, 6 to 10, I could do it there. Of course, I can't see what I'm doing because the dialog is in the way. But the column just changed from a width of 6 to 10. If I wanted to come down here as another example and change this to full, again, I've got this modal dialog which pops up. And then I could say, let's set it to full, and then I see the effect. The new release makes it much easier. So in this case, I have the table highlighted. I can just simply come over here and say 10. So instead of the modal that pops up, whatever I select on, whether it's the page, the form, this text, this table, you see the properties of it on the right. So I just changed that column to 10. I can come down here and change this to full width. So it's much simpler, fewer clicks, it's more intuitive. Now you may be asking, well, what happened to the page outline? So the page outline used to be on the right. Now we have the properties panel. What we've done is move the outline to the left, and you can toggle between the palette and the outline. All right, so some major improvements in the usability of the product. Let's take a look at some other new features which I spoke about. So I have another application, and in this application I just quickly put together for demo purposes. And on the palette, I'm going to first talk about the name picker. On the palette, you'll see this name picker item. So I can simply just drag that and put it on my application. which is what I've done here. So I have a name picker. And if I preview this application, I can go ahead and type in somebody's name, and you see how it's looking ahead in the directory and suggesting to me a name. And of course, this could be a directory with many, many different names. I could put in the first name. I could put in the first few characters. I can type in DAR. In this case, it's coming back and it's saying that's Darren as well as Samantha Darren. I can put in an email address. Any of them will work. So in this case, I picked Samantha. And what the name picker does is it populates in the view the user ID. So you can see the hierarchical user ID. It's in the organization called Renovations. But I also populated in this single line field to the right the display name. And then I populated in this field below, this email field, the internet email address. And these are all associated with this value. So this is an array that you get back, and depending on how you're going to use it, you can then get whatever attributes you want, the display name, the internet email address, or the username. And if you're going to use it in a text item, it displays it as a mail to link, right? Now, when I picked Samantha here, something else happened. I invoked a service call, and I went to the directory, and I populated a second name picker with Samantha's manager. And then I'm displaying the same thing here for the manager, display name, email, and then an echo text. So I could change that to Betty, and you'd see that Ted is the manager. All right. So let's go into this application. And so here's the name picker. The way I grabbed the values and set the display name and the email is with a little bit of JavaScript. So I'm saying that the variable name is the value for this name picker. And you can see here that I'm setting the email address to name.email. And then I'm setting the single line field to name.displayname. So this is how I pick out the different values in the array that are returned. So there's email, there's user type, there's display name, and then there's username. So you've got all those different attributes which you can pick out of that value which is returned. All right, and then I have a service call which simply just says get the name, go to the directory with the service, and then get the manager name and return that to the name picker for manager. Right, so that's how that is put together. All right, let's move on to, the other thing I'll mention about the name picker is if I go to workflow and I want to do an email notification, I can, of course, use the name picker value in my to or in my carbon copy or blind carbon copy addresses in my email, right? And then I can also use the name in the body of the email, right? And I can use that name in an assignment as well. So if I want to use the name to assign that person to a role, I could do that as well. All right, so you're picking names for a reason, and we want to make you know, the ability to assign and send notifications to that name very easy. All right, so let's move on to the next item I want to talk about, which is emailing file attachments. Emailing file attachments. So I have in this application a file attachment item. And because I have a file attachment item, and you might have seen this when I was doing the email notification before, I now have an option of including that attachment in the body of the email. Again, this could be supporting documents that I'm submitting with a request form. It could be a PDF that I'm generating that I'm sending this back to the person that filled out the form. There could be many different use cases for where I want to send the email attachment along with the email. Okay, so let's get out of there. Now let's move on to service error handling. So let me go into preview mode on this. And well, first what I want to do is I'm going to get in here and on this, I'm going to remove this JavaScript. I want to show you what it looks like without the code that I put in there. So we'll preview this. And this is a simple service call. And actually, I'm going to run into a problem here. So let me go park. I better park that JavaScript someplace before I copy something else to the clipboard. So what I want to do is I want to get this UID and show you how this service works. So I'm putting in a UID for a document, and this is a document in a notes database. So it's saying for that UID, this value equals USB stick, and this is the sales price, right? Now, if I put in an invalid UID, so I just erased a few characters, I get this ugly looking error message. Now for a user, this is kind of scary, right? So let's go and on this item change, let's go back and get that code, which I parked over here, and put this back in, and I'll explain it to you. So I have a service call which goes to that notes database and gets the information based on the UID. And this piece of code here is a service listener. So it's saying for this service, listen for when it's finished. All right, and there's two arguments that I have here, success and then error. So I'm saying that if it's not successful, well then show this message. So I'm using the app show message command. And then I'm setting the error object handle to true, which tells it not to show the ugly error message. So instead of the ugly message, it's going to show the pretty error message. So we'll preview this again with the code. And I'll first put in the correct UID so we see that it works. And now we'll put in an invalid UID. And now I've got this dialog which pops up instead of the other one, the other ugly one. So this one is a little bit more informative. So this feature lets a designer build in the ability to more gracefully handle service errors and provide the information that they want to a user in the event that there is an error with a service call. So that's service error handling. I'm going to flip to another application to show you a few more of the features. So I have a catalog here with data in it, and it's got information on different phones. All right. Now, I've set different fields in this application so that they can be sorted. So you can see I can sort by model, by platform, by storage capacity, and I think I did price as well. All right. I can also filter. So if I want to filter, let's say the model where the word pro, I want to see all the pro models, and I want to use the contains operator. So model contains word pro. So I can see where it contains the word pro, right? So there's a highway and then a couple of Apple phones that contain the word pro. So that is full text search, and then it's also sorting columns. Now, how do you set this up in your Domino Vault application? I'll start with the full text search. If you want to be able to use the contains or does not contain operator, on the settings tab, there's now an option that says create full text index. So if you've specified true, then you've got this ability to use the contains or not contains operator, right? And in the background, that's telling Domino to do a full text index on that database. Now, how do I specify that the fields are sortable? Well, it's a property. So this is a new property. So if I look at the brand, you can see the sort options, ascending, descending, or both. Ascending, descending, or both. So you set this up and you specify this for each one of the fields that you want to be sortable, right? So those are, let's see if I covered all the bases here. No, there's one I forgot. I forgot to talk about corporate themes. So let's go talk about corporate themes. We'll use this application. I'm going to go into preview mode again. So if I preview this, you can see that this is using the default blue theme. Well, actually, let me go over to style, and I'm going to disable this CSS, which is there. We'll look at it from style. So you can see that the banner is showing it's the default blue theme. If you're using the product at all, you recognize this theme. Well, now under style, I've got the ability to choose other themes. You know, I'm working in the older version of here. This is the, sorry about that. That was the July release. This is the December release. I was wondering why it wasn't there. So let's go in here and do the same thing. Here's the December release. So this is the flat blue theme. Let me disable the style sheet again. Preview that one more time. So you can see this is the style sheet. It's the flat blue. And then what I can do is I can pick a corporate theme. So let's go with blue with a logo in the header. And I'll preview this. And you can see the logo in the header. I'm using a Google font. I've got different color schemes. The buttons are different. I'll go to a second corporate theme, which I added. This one is orange buttons with no header. It's got another Google font, which is included with it. So you can see the color of the buttons, and there's no border up the top. So the way this is done is you set up a style sheet, which is nothing more than just a CSS file. And in the Vault configuration settings, there's now an option where what you can do is specify different custom themes. So you can have numerous custom themes. And there's two values that you need to enter. One is the name, and then the second is the location of the theme. So I simply took that CSS file, put it out on a server, and then made this entry. And because of that, it shows up as an option here. All right, so this is a way that you can deploy the software and provide users with a standard look for all their applications. So let's go back to the charts. And Oh, I forgot the application history. I'll show you that real quick. So application history, we'll take a look at this app. Under more, you'll see history shows up, and it's going to give me a list of every time that I've deployed or updated the app. Right, so it's not all the details on what has changed, but simply just a list of deployments and updates. So that's application history. So let's move on because we've got a lot more to talk about and we do want to get into questions. Let's talk about the March release. So that's the December release, which I was showing you. And the March release is really all about views and dashboards. We're introducing what we're calling an app page. And an app page is a top-level page in your application. It could be numerous pages. And it's different from a form. Every form page has a submit button. It has stages. It has a data schema underneath. App pages don't. They do not have a data schema. They do not participate in stages, and they don't have submit buttons. They're there for viewing information or perhaps for navigation purposes. And this is what you want to do when you're building view and dashboard style applications. They can use rules. They can use services. You can still put data items on the page, but you're going to have to connect them to a service if you want them to be populated. And there will be JavaScript API functions for items on an app page and the app page itself. A second piece that we're adding is what we're calling the data grid. And this is different than the table that is currently in the product. The table that is in the product today is really for purposes of data entry. When you put a table on your form, you're creating an array in your data schema. When I put a data grid on a view page, and I can put a data grid on a form page if I want to as well, I'm not creating anything in the data schema. There's no storage behind it. So the data grid is a way that you can go and grab data and display it and select data and do stuff with data. So the way it will work is you'll put the data grid on a view page, and then you can say populate it with data from this form, use these columns, and this is the way that I want the columns sorted. All right. You can have filters. You can have dynamic filters. There will be behaviors built into the data grid that allow you to automatically open the form associated with a row in the data grid so that you don't have to write JavaScript to do that. The initial data source for the data grid will be another Volt form. In the future, we'll add the ability to connect to any other data source, such as a Domino database, or perhaps some CRM system or other service definition which you have. And we're also looking to add the ability to toggle between view and edit mode on the data grid, as well as being able to do categorized views. So the data grid, incidentally, this is based on React Material Grid. So this is new technology that we're bringing in. This will be a key way to do many of the things that you could do in Domino views and more. So if I build an application and I have app pages and forms, of course I need a way of getting around. So we will introduce new navigation capabilities. And the goal is so that you can get from any page in your app to any other page in your app, and to do so without writing JavaScript. We're going to introduce with this product a new single page application structure so that what you can do is refer to other pages and forms in your app using URI fragments. So the use of the pound sign. So we'll load the entire app, and then based on the URI fragment, we'll take you to that page without having to do another page load or without having to actually programmatically determine what the URL is, which is what you have to do today. So this should make it much easier to do navigation in the apps that you build. Another major area of investment with the March release is in integration. And to do this, we're going to leverage technology from another HCL product called HCL Link. And we're going to address some of the shortcomings that are in Domino Vault today. If you think about Domino Vault today, what you can do is create connections very easily to other Domino applications or to other Vault applications. If you want to create a connection to your CRM system or to a SQL database or to your ERP system, you can, but it's a lot of work. You have to, define the XML for the service definition, or you have to configure the REST calls using the URL, make sure that you've got the, the header and the security, the OAuth is taken care of. It becomes very tricky to do that. So what we want to get to is an expansive library of proven connectors. We need to provide you with a simple way to connect to all the properties that are important to you. So the different CRM systems that are out there, certainly Microsoft Dynamics and Salesforce are two of them. The ERP systems, SAP is very important. Being able to connect to non-REST endpoints like SQL Server, and to be able to do this without getting down to a level of gets and puts and posts, we want to provide methods to the user at a level that makes sense to the Vault designer. I want to create a record. I want to query a record. I want to get customer information. And, to do this under the covers, you need data transformation capabilities. And in some cases, you need to combine the multiple API calls into a single connection. So if I'm going to go to the CRM system and get customer information, well, I need to authenticate. So that's an OAuth call. Perhaps I need to get a customer ID. And then maybe there's a third call where I need to get the information about the customer that I'm after. Perhaps it's the revenue information. So with this new approach, we'll be able to consolidate numerous API calls and provide in a single step what users want to do. So this is all new, and this is coming with integration of HCL Link technology in the March release. Now, beyond the March release, we're very focused on workflow, and the timing of this will be around the Domino V12 timeframe. Key new capabilities include a visual workflow design, so a graphical, actually sketching out the workflow, improved workflow decisioning rules. So we need to make it very simple to specify the logic for when the workflow goes to step A as opposed to step B, etc. Today in the software, you can do some of this, but you have to play the game of here's different action buttons. The different action buttons point to different stages. I'm going to show this button when this condition is true. I'm going to hide this button when this condition is true. That's not entirely intuitive. We need to come up with a different approach where you can just build out these decisioning rules and make them much more complex than the way they are today. Another area that we're going to improve is on workflow assignments. So today you have to have an open role, and then you have to have the permissions set properly for the open role, and then you have to make the assignment by a service call. Well, that should all be one step. I should say that I want to assign this to my manager or this person's manager, and that should be it. I shouldn't have to worry about the role and the permissions. It should be very simple and straightforward. And in that workflow assignment, I should also be able to specify the notification, the due date, and whether or not I want to specify a reminder notification. So we'll add reminders and due dates, reminder notifications and due dates to the product. Another area that's important with workflow is more on the runtime. If I'm using an application, I need to see my requests. I need to see requests that need my attention. So this is task list type functionality. And to implement this, we'll use the new app page or the view page in the data grid. And then we need to make it very simple to log all approval activity for a workflow. Right, so if you have multiple approvers, we need to know when something was touched by each approver and whether it was approved or denied. Right, that becomes very important for audit purposes. Right, so a lot going on in workflow. Integration with Domino. We will introduce in the March release the ability to create and update documents in Domino apps. We introduced in July the ability to read Domino documents, Domino views. So this will complete the ability to interact with Domino data and provide full create, read, update, and delete capabilities. We're looking to expand beyond Domino apps that are on the same server. So there's a limitation today that the Domino app has to be on the same server. We're going to expand that. We need to work with Domino Rich Text. Of course, Domino Rich Text came about before the notion of web markup, rich HTML. So there's some work that we need to do to adapt to that. The data grid that I talked about before, that needs to work with Domino apps. And then finally, we need to make it very easy to interact with agents. The agents that you have investments in many cases are doing some very useful things, and to be able to trigger those from a Domino Vault app could be very useful. And I have some examples here. All right. And then this finally gets us to the last topic in the roadmap, which is something we're calling Vault Business. And Vault Business will be based off of the 2Q release, so the V12 timeframe release of Domino Vault, but it'll be a self-contained offering. So this will be one product, one thing that a customer can buy and install, where Domino Vault today is something that a Domino customer buys and installs on top of their existing Domino. Right? We have another product out there which is very similar to Domino Vault. It's called HCL Leap. It runs on WebSphere and DB2, Oracle as an option, and Vault Business will become the preferred path for these customers going forward. So this gives us the ability to have a single development effort and to deliver all features to all customers, whether you're a Domino customer, an HCL Leap customer, or a brand new customer. So Vault Business will be delivered as a container. Well, it will be delivered as a Docker image, which you deploy as a container. You will need no special Domino skills to deploy the container or to set it up with your LDAP, your SAML, your certificates, your SMTP. This needs to be very simple to deploy, and there will be no Domino clients or Domino skills required to set this up. You can run it on your own servers. You can run it on any server you want in the cloud. So you can think of it almost as an appliance, right? So that's the roadmap where we're going with Domino Volt and Volt Business. With that, I think we can turn it over to Q&A.
Мартин, спасибо огромное вам за интересную лекцию. У нас есть несколько вопросов от слушателей.
Martin, thanks a lot for your very interesting lecture, and we have a few questions from the audience.
HCL-link, можно ли поподробнее, синхронное или асинхронное?
Could you elaborate a little bit more on HCL link? Is it synchronous or asynchronous?
HCL link can work both synchronous and asynchronously.
Ну, HCL link может работать как синхронно, так и асинхронно. Обе возможности.
Workflow поддержка BPMN планируется или нет?
Workflow, is it, do you have in your plans to support BPMN?
No, we do not have in our plans to support BPMN. I do not think BPMN is at a level for citizen developers. I think BPMN is perhaps too technical.
Нет, BPMN таких планов нет поддерживать, потому что я не думаю, что это на уровне гражданского использования, то есть не для простых людей. Я думаю, что это она включает в себя слишком много технических моментов для того, чтобы включить это в наши планы.
Спасибо. И есть ли идеи с механизмами BI, генератор ETL процессов, например, в докер-контейнере очередь сообщений какая будет?
So, and do you have any ideas about the integration of BI, ITL, and in the Docker containers, what is going to be the queue? Does it make any sense what I said?
Well, BI as in business intelligence.
BI — это business intelligence, то есть бизнес-интеллект.
Да, вопрос про их механизмы. То есть есть ли какие-то идеи с механизмами этими?
Yeah, so is there any ideas about the mechanisms of how it's going to be implemented?
Well, every Domino Volt app you create exposes its data via a REST API automatically.
Но каждое приложение Domino, оно представляет данные автоматически через API.
So if you wanted to grab the data, you can take it and then use it in a BI tool. The other approach is you can export the data in Excel format to use in a BI tool.
Фактически, что здесь можно сделать? Можно взять любые данные и дальше экспортировать его непосредственно в инструмент BI, или другой вариант — это экспортировать его в формат Excel. Excels.
Спасибо. И, мне кажется, остался неотвеченным вопрос. В докер-контейнере очередь сообщений какая будет?
I'm sorry, maybe I will repeat the question. In the Docker container, what is going to be the queue? Какая очередь будет в докер-контейнере?
In the Docker container, what is going to be the queue? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Я не совсем понял вопрос.
Хорошо, не страшно. Мы попросим участника уточнить и отправим вам по имейлу.
Okay, the queue of messages, he asked actually. Okay, if the question is not clear, then we will ask our participant to send us an additional message and then reply to him via email.
Okay.
Спасибо большое и до новых встреч.
Thanks a lot, and see you again in the future.